Hey guys, welcome back to the BuzWeaver channel, and in our top stories today, actually from Sunday, which is not a surprise that it was on Sunday, but nonetheless, guys, here we go. The New York Post: only 33% would vote to re-elect Biden if presidential election was held today. Now, these little spontaneous little voting questions, of course, are a little different than when the Democrats have much more time to prepare, as we see here in the midterms. But I think in the midterms, as we're now approaching very closely to November, I think the Democrats have done everything they can. They've sprang every surprise for October that they can, as they often hear. If you guys aren't familiar, October surprises. I think they have done everything they can thus far, and what they are continuing to try to do, for example, Biden's ice cream moment at the parlor where he was trying to get all folksy, didn't exactly turn out very well either. And I think just in general, interacting with Biden doesn't really favor or turn out very well for him, particularly now. Only 33% of Americans would vote to re-elect President Biden if the 2024 elections were held today, and 54 would cast their ballot for another candidate, according to a Fox News poll released Sunday. Now, the reason these numbers are important is because I'm going to show you the Hill polls, because they're always going to be skewed one way or another. So we can't necessarily depend exclusively on this sort of polling and or aggregate type polling in general, because we've seen how they've been skewed and off when the elections actually arrive. So a lot of this, in my opinion, I've never been a huge statistical fan when it comes to more of an opinion when you're just asking random people, for example, in certain samples and so forth and so on, because people are going to say certain things and oftentimes what they think people want to hear versus what they may be feeling. And of course, because we live in a cancel culture, outrage mob, woke society right now, because they've hijacked our culture, people are often afraid to even voice their opinion. The 33% who would vote for Biden, 21% definitely and 12% probably, mark a drop of 3 percentage points since January, while the percentage who would opt for someone else fell from 60 to 54 in that period, the survey found. The poll also showed that while 71% of Democrats would vote to re-elect the president, 19% would not, along with 91% of Republicans and 54% of independents. Now, like I say, maybe it's my cynicism, maybe it's my snarkiness, maybe it's just my thoughts on this, but we've already seen the polling in the last several years, in the last several elections. They're never really all that particularly accurate. Here in Georgia, from CNBC, Georgia breaks first day early voting record, nearly doubles figure from last midterms. And as I mentioned yesterday in my video, in one of the videos I made yesterday for our top stories, I mentioned that I wasn't going to go early voting on Monday because I anticipated that it was going to be incredibly busy, and it was. My father actually went, and he stood in line for about 30 minutes. He said he moved about 3 feet in 30 minutes, and so he just came back home. He said he was going to go vote at another time. So more than 131 Georgia voters cast ballots since early voting began Monday, according to the Office of Georgia Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger. The figures represent an 85% boost over the 2018 midterms, when nearly 71,000 early voters were cast on day one, the office said. So, of course, as I said, the numbers are always going to be rather curious. Now, this is a little bit more static, I guess you could say, because these are numbers that they were able to count as people were actually out voting, as opposed to just calling random people to find out about a polling survey. So 131,000, which is not unusual. We had a lot here, as I said, here in our city. My father went, and he said he stood in line for about 30 minutes and moved about 3 feet and said, forget it, I'll go vote another day. So it's interesting to see what direction we're going in. And I found this interesting from The Hill, as I mentioned earlier. Trump nips Biden in New York Times poll among likely voters. Now, in my opinion, maybe, again, it's my cynicism, maybe it's my sarcasm, these are kind of dog whistles, I think, by the media to Democrats to say, get out and vote. We need you to get out there and start doing stuff. And I've just noticed just the atmosphere, the messaging, the marketing, the PR is a lot different for some unusual reason, because I think they were really leaning towards abortion, and I think they were really, really leaning towards January 6th. And the January 6th committee hearings, the Banana Republic hung jury nonsense that they're doing, their dog and pony show isn't working at all, period. Former President Trump leads President Biden by 1 point in a hypothetical rematch, according to a New York Times Siena College poll published Monday. Again, hypothetical is, we're talking about Trump versus Biden here, and the media is always going to skew towards Democrats anyway. So Trump leads Biden 45-44 when likely voters were asked whom they would support if the 2024 presidential election were held today. That's roughly in line with previous polling showing Trump leading Biden. Vice President Harris and Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont in hypothetical matchups. Of course, it's all kind of hypothetical in the end. But what isn't hypothetical, ladies and gentlemen, is what Americans are most concerned about. And from interactive polls, again, yes, I know we're dealing more in polls, Harvard-Harris poll, most important issues: inflation, the economy. I think jobs should be 3 as well, but I think they kind of sliced it up to maybe, get whatever particular perspective they wanted here. Third was immigration, 4 crime and drugs, and then abortion. I would say crime and drugs are also kind of high as well. But as you can see here, some of the Democrat-led type directions or patterns or strategies aren't as high on the list. I mean, abortion is obviously going to be one across the board, right? I mean, that's an issue that's always important, particularly for women, across the board, across all political spectrums. But the January 6th is the most important issue to 7% of registered voters. These are registered voters. So generic ballots among these just kind of show, right, that, people are more interested in, see here, price increases, inflation, economy and jobs, immigration, crime and drugs, women's rights, health care, and then guns is another one of the issues that Democrats like to vote for or move towards. Environment, climate change, as you can see here, guys, it's quite obvious that, the direction of our country, because people can feel it, right? It's one thing when you don't have a lot of news, and so you have to mock and make fun of and ridicule the former president about his hair or his skin color or whatever, all these superficial tabloidy nonsense, because the country was doing well, right? When things are going well, you normally don't talk about those particular things sometimes, unless, of course, your particular party is the one who's in charge and things just happen to be working out the way you wanted to. But nonetheless, of course, now everyone can feel the difference. Everyone can feel the difference under this current administration when it comes to inflation, the economy, jobs, immigration, crimes, and abortion. They can sense and feel all of these things, as I'm sure many of you have, particularly you guys in Europe. Oh, boy, are you really feeling the effects of how the economy here in the United States affects the rest of the world? Boy, are you guys really feeling that. This is why energy independence here in the United States is so critical and crucial. But the pipeline was shut down. Drilling permits, all these things were completely shut down. And then we have Biden out there trying to go to the Saudis, going to Venezuela. Of course, then he tried to, of course, the quid pro quo that everyone's calling when he went to Saudi Arabia to try to get things settled down for the midterms for 1 month, because that totally doesn't sound like a quid pro quo. And that's what I have for you guys today. Yes, only 33% will vote to reelect Biden. But then again, that's if the election was held today. But we know Democrats, particularly when it comes to the election, are going to be far more firebrand. But it's going to be very interesting to see how the midterms turn out, because that's going to be a catalyst for them. That will give them the idea, the clue, what's going to happen. And I think it's going to not be as pretty. I don't think it's going to be a total and complete and total red wave. That's what I would want. That's what I would wish for. But a lot of things that I wish for don't always come true. But nonetheless, guys, if you haven't already, that would be the channel icon appearing right there on the screen. If you're on YouTube, you can click on that to subscribe, along with notifications. And I want to thank all of you guys for your continued support, and I will see you in the next video.